early morning Jet 2 flight from Manchester brings us to Venice to board Riviera in time for lunch for a 9-day cruise from Venice to Rome. We didn't attempt any sightseeing in Venice. We settled into the ship in plenty of time for its late evening departure. Riviera sailed just 97 nautical miles across the Gulf of Venice to Koper overnight in Slovenia. Koper, once known as Capodistria, was part of the Venetian Empire. Leaving the ship, all we need to do is cross the road and we're in the old town centre. The Cathedral of the Assumption dates from the 12th century and the Italian-style bell tower from the 14th century. The Loggia dates from the 15th century. The Praetorian Palace dates from the 13th century and is now the town hall. The Da Ponte fountain dates from the 17th century and was commissioned by a Venetian noble family of that name. Just outside the old town, a thriving street market. The taverna was originally a salt warehouse, but now it's used for public performances. Saint Justina on the column commemorates the Battle of Lepanto. Not all the old Venetian houses are in such good repair. Next morning we're in Ravenna and we're going to see the 5th and 6th century AD mosaics. The remains of a church built on the site of the palace of King Theodoric, and the church of Sant Apollonario Nuovo, built by Theodoric in 504 AD as his chapel. It contains the greatest area of Byzantine mosaics anywhere in the world. The main friezes are supposed to depict a procession from Theodoric's palace to heaven. The Church of St. Francis, 12th century, but we're not going in because there are no ancient mosaics in there. But nearby is the tomb of Dante. The baptistry of Neon dates from the end of the 5th century, and that's when the mosaics here were completed. About halfway through our tour, we've arrived at the Piazza del Popolo, and that's where we have our break. Next, it's the Basilica of San Vitale. This dates from the middle of the 6th century AD and is another splendid collection of mosaics. the Emperor Justinian and his retinue. Nearby is the mausoleum of Galla Placida, the last of our UNESCO monuments today. This was built in the early 5th century. Galla Placida was a very important lady in the late Roman Empire, being the daughter, wife and mother of emperors. Back across the Adriatic Sea to Zadar, Croatia. This is apparently the oldest continuously inhabited city in Croatia. Riviera will berth in the new docks, and a shuttle bus takes us to the gates of the old town. This is People's Square. What remains of the Roman Forum, founded by the Emperor Augustus at the end of the 1st century BC. The Church of St. Donatus was completed in the 9th century. The Cathedral of St. Anastasia is 13th century. The Greeting to the Sun installation turns into a light show at night. The sea organ uses wave power to create sound. Opposite is the island of Ugljan, one of Croatia's many islands. St. Chrysogonus Church and the Sea Gate. The Captain's Tower, close to where we reboard our shuttle. 278 nautical miles down the Dalmatian coast to Kotor, Montenegro. Kotor is located at the head of the Bay of Kotor, which is a ria, or a drowned river valley. The Venetian-style church towers that we pass remind us that this was part of the Venetian Empire. Star Flyer is already at anchor by the time we arrive, and Silver Spirit follows us in and gets the berth. We enter the old town through the Sea Gate. The Venetian city walls climb high up the mountainside. St. Tryphon's Catholic Cathedral. There are still some buildings in the old town with potential for doing up. St. Mary's Church from the early 13th century has the remains of some 15th century frescoes. St. Luke's Church. St. Nicholas Serbian Orthodox Church. Next stop is Corfu in the Ionian Islands, the westernmost part of Greece. The shuttle bus takes us to the old town and leaves us by the platea, a large open area. This early in the morning, the town is practically deserted, and it's much more pleasant than usual to be able to just walk around. The Church of St. Anthony and St. Andrew was built in 1753. By the time we get back to the platea, the crowds are beginning to build up in town, and we rejoin our shuttle bus in front of the new fortress, which was built by the Venetians in the 16th century. We left Corfu in mid-afternoon and arrived in Valletta the next day at noon. The weather wasn't brilliant and we decided to stay on board, taking in the view of the Grand Harbour. P&O's Oceana was in port with us, as well as a German cruise ship. The harbour walls are undergoing significant restoration. We left Valletta late night, and in the morning we're arriving in Catania, Sicily. Etna is lurking behind that cloud. We head off on foot, aiming for the cathedral. After a few misturns, we find ourselves in the Piazza del Duomo. The strange elephant structure was created in 1736. The elephant is Roman and the obelisk is from ancient Egypt. St. Agatha's Cathedral has been rebuilt many times, most recently in the Baroque style. This is because of earthquake and volcanic damage. The tomb of the composer Vincenzo Bellini, who was born in Catania and died at the age of only 33. There are many grand old buildings in Catania, but often they don't look very much from the outside. The Church of St. Francis of Assisi. Nearby, hidden by and partly buried by more modern buildings, is the Roman theatre. It was built around 300 AD, based on a much older Greek structure. In the morning we arrive in Naples, and we are approaching shortly after dawn. Pacific Princess is berthed nearby, and we have a good clear view of Vesuvius this morning. Also a good clear view of the Sorrento Peninsula and the Isle of Capri. Today we're visiting the Archaeological Museum, which is housed in a building dating from the late 16th century. The bronze horse from Herculaneum was reconstructed from fragments in the 18th century. This room contains finds from the House of the Papyri in Herculaneum, a bust of Scipio Africanus, the conqueror of Carthage. This vase was found in Pompeii. These frescoes were taken from the walls of the houses excavated in Pompeii. The mosaics are from both Pompeii and Herculaneum. The famous Alexander mosaic depicts Alexander the Great attacking King Darius of Persia, and it was found in Pompeii. It dates from the 1st century BC. There's an incredibly detailed model of the ruins of Pompeii. Sailing out of Naples, it's a perfect evening for viewing Vesuvius and the Sorrento Peninsula. Our cruise ends the following morning in Civitavecchia, and we're staying in Rome for one night at our favourite, the Eque Hotel, next to the Opera House. Nearby is the Piazza della Repubblica and what's left of the baths of Diocletian, which were built around 300 AD. For some reason, Peruvians living in Rome are holding a procession this Sunday morning. The church of Santa Maria Maggiore was built in the early 5th century, but this facade was added in the early 18th century. The church was built over a Roman house dating from the 2nd century AD, and this has now been partially excavated, and you can visit these excavations for a small fee.